Hi, I'm John McKenna, and I'm the infrared training instructor for InterNACHI. InterNACHI stands for the International Association of Certified Home Inspectors. There are a lot more home inspectors that are coming into the areas now with thermal imaging technology and their cameras, and so there's a lot of consumers and realtors that are asking the question, what should they expect from someone that brings a thermal imaging camera to do a home inspection? And we wanted to help clarify some of the questions that people may have about that subject. One of the things that we've done at InterNACHI to help identify a home inspector that is qualified to do a thermal imaging scan of a home or a building is to create a certification process by which someone can be educated and trained, and when they come to a location to do a thermal imaging scan, that they'll have a greater understanding and the ability to do a professional service for the client and not go in as a novice, not knowing or understanding the technology that they're working with. So with that in mind, if you see a home inspector that bears the infrared certified logo and trademark, understand that the qualifications, the prerequisite that they had to fulfill in order to receive that designation was, one, they had to fulfill 16 hours of an infrared certification training and building science. Number two, they have to be a member of InterNACHI and pass the InterNACHI examination for entrance into the association. And number three, there's a course that's required along with that. It's about another 8-hour course that a home inspector is required to fulfill. The reason why we created this certification is so that the consumers and realtors, contractors, anyone that needs a certified thermographer to come in and do analysis with thermal imaging would know those that are infrared certified and bear that professional trademark and logo have been trained, they are qualified inspector, and that they can do a professional job. Now, what we'd like to do for the remainder of our time on this video is also to help you to understand what can you expect from an inspector that brings a thermal imaging camera to a home inspection or a building inspection. What we look at, if these images, if you'll see in the first image that we're going to display to you, here's one of the examples of the items that may show up in a thermal imaging inspection. You see the bright areas in the cathedral ceiling show that there's a lack of insulation and that hot air from the attic is causing that upper part of the wall to have an energy deficiency. This is just one of the aspects of thermal imaging. The darker areas are cool and the brighter areas are showing us places where heat from the attic is coming through the wall. Many people find that if they can get someone to come in and do an energy audit, give them a better understanding of the energy deficiencies within a home, this goes a long ways to help them determine the places they can save money, and also when they make the sale of a home, if the home is actually energy efficient or not. In the next set of images here, you see there's a doorway, and above that is a ceiling area. Look at the thermal imaging on the right. Here we see there's a dark moisture area that showed up on the camera. This is one of the key elements of thermal imaging inspection, is it helps to reveal hidden moisture that cannot be seen with the naked eye. It's better to find these areas of moisture before they become a major problem, because moisture can be conducive to fungi and mold, decay, and also wood-destroying insects. So if you're considering a thermal imaging scan of your particular building, understand that thermal imaging can help reveal the moisture problems, and that is a very, very significant issue when you consider the condition of a building. Look at the next set of images there. Thermal imaging scan may reveal moisture that's hidden there by the toilet. Quite a few number of areas that moisture can show up. If you see something that's next to a wooden foundation or other wood materials that can suffer from decay, if moisture is detected that's not visible to the naked eye, there may also be some other defects associated with the moisture. as wood-destroying insects or decay or fungus. These are all part of the revelation that can come as the infrared scan reveals these hidden anomalies. In the next images here, we show an electrical panel, and many times an inspector that goes in looking at the electric panel can find electrical hotspots. If your inspector has a good, strong background in electrical training, then he'll be able to diagnose some of these issues and give you a true understanding of some of the issues and defects that might show up through these electrical hotspots. One thing to verify is, does your inspector have the proper training? Is the thermal imaging camera? And do they have the proper training in the electrical background so that when they make recommendations, they're truly talking from a voice of experience and not calling out defects they may not understand themselves. Look at the next image. We see leaks in the ductwork system. The image on the right shows the flex duct going into a plenum area, and the image on the right, the thermal image, we see the dark areas around it showing leaks in the ductwork. This can be not only a loss of energy and a cost to the person that's living in the home, but it can also be a battle between hot and cold air in the attic space, and that in return can also cause the moisture issues that we've already referred to. The next image, we see some light areas that show up in the ceiling, and these lighter areas are a lack of insulation. We have energy that's being lost right there. And on the far right side of that thermal image, you can see a dark area where water is flowing down that wall chase. With the naked eye, this would not be visible. With the thermal imaging scan, this is a very significant find. And before a person would purchase a home, they would want these issues to be repaired and looked at to verify that this moisture had been stopped so that the other destructive issues of moisture do not develop later. Now, the next set of images, here we have a picture of a bathtub, and on the wall we see an electrical hotspot that's coming from an oven on the back side of that bathtub wall. Again, this was an image that was taken of an oven that had a defect on the back side, and fortunately this was captured and could be repaired before this hotspot became a major safety issue. Look at the next set of pictures. Many times when a person goes to buy a home, they'll see walls, ceilings, different areas of the house that have been painted, repaired, and sometimes people will say all the repair items are finished. Well, with the thermal imaging scan, it helps us to see things that the naked eyes may not see. In this particular image, we see that the plumbing repairs did not work completely and that there is still moisture in that wall. Even though it's been painted completely over, there's no stains and everything looks just fine. Fortunately, this was discovered before the person bought the house. In the next image here, we see that we isolated a hot water pipe that was located in a concrete foundation. And in this particular location, it was in a position of vulnerability and there was a defect in the installation. Fortunately, they caught this before they purchased the home. As you see the next picture here, we have a picture of a handprint on the wall. I inserted this picture to help people understand this is simply what you're looking at with the thermal imaging scan of the walls and the floors and the ceilings, is the transfer of the heat image from that surface into the lens of the camera. And when you take a person's hand, place it on the wall, take that hand away, the temperature on the surface of that wall is what the camera is detecting. It's not X-ray vision, even though sometimes the image of the heat that is behind the objects, behind the sheetrock, behind the ceiling can bleed through and show up on the camera. It's not actually what you would call an X-ray of the home, but the technology is confused sometimes with X-ray because it does reveal so much. On the next set of photographs here, it gives another illustration of what you can expect from a thermal imaging scan of a building. Here we see that air is leaking around a ductwork connection and that supply air of air conditioning is actually escaping into the cavities of the ceiling. And that can create, again, the battle of hot and cold air meeting at the attic location, and that can create a condensation or a moisture issue. Here's another picture up in the attic. we see a vent pipe going up through the plywood decking, and we see the rafters going down. On the thermal imaging picture, we see a dark area around the vent pipe, and this helps to show that moisture was detected around the flashing area where the roof allowed the pipe to penetrate through the roofing. This flashing area of the roof jack many times can become brittle through ultraviolet rays or some type of defect, and moisture can also come down through that vent pipe area and that connection as it passes through the roof, and then that can go into the dwelling. Also notice that there's a long kind of shadowy looking deal, and when you see images from an infrared scan, it's good to ask the inspector, did you verify your findings? Is that dark area that you're showing really a moisture problem, or is that just a shadow of something on the roof? Is it a pile of leaves, or is it just the shadow from the roof jack? Again, that's what we emphasize in our training to the home inspectors is verification, verification, verification. Always verify everything that is shown with the infrared camera with other tools so that you can give sound advice for those that need the instruction of repairs. Okay, go to the next image and you'll see an air conditioning system here up in the attic. You can see the drip pan is full of water. And then on the thermal imaging, we can also see that the moisture is spreading out into the insulation. And in this situation, the moisture was spreading out very far from the AC unit itself. This can lead to some severe defects and repair issues. It can be very expensive if you allow that moisture to spread out across the insulation like a slow-moving sponge, and left unattended can actually create some severe repair issues going into the future. All right. Again, on the next image, you can see we've illustrated the point. Thermal imaging is not X-ray vision, so don't be alarmed that someone comes in with the camera. They are not looking through the walls or someone's clothing. The next picture shows us that infrared camera does not release radiation into a home. I cover these 2 points about X-ray vision and radiation because sometimes people get concerned that that's actually what the camera is doing in their home, and that is not the case. They emit no radiation. They are only reading and photographing the radiated heat and the energy that comes from various objects and materials in your home. Look at the next picture here. We see moisture that was detected under a sink. Again, the thermal imaging makes clearly visible things that would not normally be easily detected, sometimes impossible to detect with the naked eye. See the next set of photographs, we see a air conditioning system and leaks that are traveling down through the wall, and some leaks, bright dark spots that are showing up near the floor area. Again, thermal imaging reveals things not easily seen. The next set of photographs, look at the wall here, and we see right at the base of the wall that there's moisture bleeding through from the inside, showing up as a darker image as that water cools that material, and the camera can detect the change of temperature, so the cool area looks like that dark area on the bottom of that wall, and that's how the moisture is seen with the thermal image, whereas if you look at the photograph with the naked eye, you wouldn't see anything. Again, look at the next set of photographs. This will help you understand what you can reveal with thermal imaging. This is the inside of that same wall, and we can see that there's moisture going across the wall by the toilet there, not readily visible. Now, sometimes the thermal imaging camera works in some environments very, very well. There's other environments where it does not. It's good for your home inspector to know when the thermal imaging camera can work in certain environments well and when it does not. Because sometimes when everything has reached the same temperature, say a house that has no air conditioning and heating, the inside of the house and the outside are all the same temperature, even the moisture in the house can reach the same temperature as the walls or the floors or the ceilings. And I say that to people so that when they talk to their inspector, that you can cross-examine and verify. Not only do you have the proper training, but the environment that we're going to do this inspection, is this going to be conducive for the camera to pick up the most details? Or is today a bad day? Or do we need to turn the air conditioner or the heater on before you arrive so that we can create the proper conditions that will help the camera pick out the most extreme temperature differences and make those anomalies in the details very visible? See the next picture here, some moisture was picked up on the outside porch, and this was a roof leak. Again, there were several stains on the porch. All those stains, the majority of them did not have moisture. They were old stains. But in this particular thermal image, it went past the old dry ones, and it found the ones back in the corner that were indeed still wet. The next set of photographs, you see multi-layered ceiling here, and you can see the lack of insulation. You can see the ductwork traveling across the lower ceiling area. This just gives you an idea how sensitive the camera is. It picks up the ductwork up in the attic area, picks up a lack of insulation, it picks up the lower coolness of the lower walls, it picks up the different temperatures of the upper walls and the ceilings, and then it shows very clearly the areas that it is lacking and even missing some of the insulation. And this was a brand new house. This house had not even been lived in. It was brand new, and yet there was so much missing insulation, the builder had to go back and spend a significant amount of time re-insulating a lot of this house. Look at the next picture here. We see a set of French doors, and we see on the right side the thermal imaging is revealing energy leaking around those doors as the air conditioner and the cooler area inside. That energy is coming out around the gaps around that door jamb. Let's look at the next set of images. Here we see ductwork up in the attic. Again, there was a poorly insulated connection in the attic. You can see the dark area where the connection of the vent and the duct work comes together, and where that pipe connects you can see a very dark area, and when we look closely at that area there was actually moisture dripping into the attic and onto the ceiling. So this was a good find, and it helped save a repair item that could have developed into something that could grow mold or create decay. Again, we see the next image. Here's a photograph of a normal wall plug. It looks like nothing's going on in the actual photograph on the left. On the right side, we see a hot spot in the plug. And with further examination, we were able to tell that there was indeed some resistance and that there was heat building up in the electrical circuit, and there was indeed some things that needed to be repaired before that turned into an electrical issue that could have been a very severe safety issue. Turn to the next image. Again, we see the picture of the toilet. Moisture was detected. I wanted to include this photograph because sometimes thermographers will use different palettes. This is a black and white thermal image. Sometimes you'll see the different colors like we've seen on the previous photographs, and that was called a palette that's called iron. And sometimes you'll even see other varieties that are called rainbow. Different palettes allow the thermographer and the camera to bring out more clarity of the anomalies that they may discover. Here on the next photograph we see a flat roof, and we see the bright spot there on the left is hidden moisture. This is one of the issues that sometimes people are concerned about. A flat roof are sometimes prone to leak more often because they trap the water and will not allow it to drain out. And so with the thermal imaging camera and the right environments, the right variables, they were able to capture this image of the water was getting hot because of the hot sunshine. As the sun went down, the roofing materials on the surface of the flat roof began to cool off, but the water underneath stayed hot, and the infrared camera was able to make a clear and distinct photograph of that. So again, without destroying any of the roofing material, the moisture that was underneath was detected, and the location could now be repaired without just randomly going across the roof and tearing up the materials, not knowing exactly where to look. Look on the next set of photographs. Here we see a Freon line, and that cold Freon line going to the air conditioning is condensation is dripping off of that from the attic, and it's causing moisture to collect into the ceiling of the garage. To the naked eye, you wouldn't see the moisture, but again, moisture showed up as this darker image in the thermal scan. As you can see from these photographs, there's a significant variety of things that thermal imaging may discover that the normal home inspection with just the naked eye would be practically impossible, and many times it is impossible to see these things. See, in the next photograph, here's a ceiling area that's over a bunk bed, and you can see by the pillow and the mattresses there, and right over it there was a significant amount of moisture that was coming in from a roof leak, and it was not visible. If that was left to itself and not repaired, that moisture area could grow fungus and mold. That person sleeping there right underneath that fungus and mold area could be affected by the growth of that fungus in that area. So again, moisture can create a lot of issues like fungus and mold, decay, and termites. If you can find the moisture, you can stop and relieve and fix some of the other issues that go with it. All right, look at the next set of photos here. We see this is a mobile home, and air is leaking into the the joist area, the blank spot in the floor between the joist, and it's not visible to the eyes, but the cold air going into this area underneath the floor was creating a battle between hot and cold air of the crawl space area underneath the mobile home, and this too is conducive to a moisture condition, and that's not what you want while you're living in a mobile home, is for moisture to be collecting within the underneath the floor area and then coming in through the ductwork, because you've allowed hot and cold air to battle each other in the floor area. All right, the next picture shows an attic space, and I included this because there's so many different anomalies and factors that may show up in the attic, and this just gives you an indication of the infrared camera sees things different than the naked eye. The darker areas are cool. Sometimes that can reveal moisture or leaks in the roof. The hotter areas give you also an indication how hot those materials are getting, and we've seen it in Texas sometimes that the temperatures of those materials can get up to 150, 160 degrees. So it gives you a real idea of what you're battling with in the attic area. Again, the next set of photographs shows a breaker panel. And again, we talked about being well versed in the background knowledge of electrical systems to make sure that that inspector, if he calls out a defect, understands exactly what he's talking about. Here we see on the outside photograph of a balcony, and we see moisture coming across the outside area there all the way down. The next set of photographs shows an air conditioning condensing unit on the outside of a house, and we can see that there's some symptoms of a clogged freon coils. With the naked eye, this would not be visible, but with the thermal imaging scan, this was detected. The next set of pictures here shows a hot spot on a furnace located in the attic. Very, very hot. This is a dangerous situation. You don't want your furnace to lose its insulation value. There's other anomalies about a heating and furnace system that will show up with an infrared camera. Very, very valuable information. Might not be seen if an inspector did not have that camera. Again, motors, air conditioners and heaters, all these things need the proper training and background, just like the electrical or the plumbing or the appliances or the structure and all of its components and systems, so that if you find a qualified thermographer, home inspector who's been well trained in the areas of the house and its systems, they'll be able to diagnose these things with understanding. Again, this is why InterNACHI has gone through the process of creating the infrared certified designation, so that someone is tested, they are qualified in the knowledge of being a home inspector, and that they have taken courses that are required in this certification, and they have been trained in the science of infrared technology before they could carry and demonstrate the logo of infrared certified to the public. Again, the next picture shows a window leak. We've not seen with the naked eye, but here we've got water not only on the window, it's flowing down inside the wall, and now it's spreading out across the flooring area. Here we see an electrical hotspot. It's so good to know when you find electrical hazards and hotspots that could lead to the loss of property and possibly life, that the infrared scan can find some of these issues and help get those items repaired to help make a safer home for everyone that lives inside of it. Again, we see on the next set of photographs moisture that is coming up around an electrical light fixture just because of the air that comes from the indoor dwelling going up to the can light, and this particular light fixture allowed the rising hot air from around that light bulb to escape into the attic area, and in this case the attic area had moist cold air, so hot and cold air began to battle with each other. There was no roof leak at all, but that dark area all the way around that electrical fixture was moisture. And if there's moisture around the electrical fixture, there can also be the chance of corrosion and rust on the electrical fixture, and that can create a system backup in the system because of resistance and overheating. So one thing leads to another. The more a thermographer home inspector can go into a home and detect these hidden issues, the safer the home will be, and these things can be done before someone finds out later after it's become more of a serious issue. So the question is your inspector blind? Now, recently I went behind a home inspector who had 29 years of experience, very, very nice gentleman, did an excellent job to the best that he could. But he was limited to a normal home inspection with just a flashlight. And he does good in the realm that he works. Chance worked it out that I was called in right behind him with the thermal imaging camera. We found all types of missing insulation, moisture intrusion in about 6 or 7 different places throughout the house. Several other issues were detected with the camera. Now, I don't condemn this other inspector, but I have to say for myself, I can never go back to inspecting without a thermal imaging camera because I feel blind. So really the question is, with the new technology that's available, ask yourself this: is your inspector blind? Because with the new technology, it gives the inspector a new set of eyes in the realm of infrared energy, and many things that could not be seen normally with the naked eye, an infrared inspector can now detect and help you analyze these things and make recommendations for these repair items, energy items, safety issues before they develop into something worse. So I recommend to everyone, do your homework, try to find an inspector that is infrared certified. They have been qualified with experience in construction, strong education in home inspection background, and that they have a strong training in infrared technology, and that they know how to use a camera properly to report to you what the thermal images may reveal.